Hello, everybody. Good evening. Welcome again to another edition of Everyday Faith, where we talk about the intersection of faith and the personal, the professional, and the political. And today we have an incredible guest, uh, Carolyn CJ Essex, and I met her when back in the Yang campaign, and I remember specifically the need to do African American outreach because I saw the numbers, and in another video I said, if we win the black vote, if we win the vote of the African American voters, we will win this primary. And what happened during the election? Bernie Sanders won basically Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, but once you got to South Carolina and the Super Tuesday states, what happened? That's when the African American, the so-called black vote, made the biggest difference. And who won? Joe Biden, because he won like 65% of the African American vote. So the bottom line is, if you want to win the Democratic primary, the gatekeepers are basically Super Tuesday, the African American vote. And that's how CJ and I connected, because she also had a passion as someone who mobilized, galvanized, and organized for Barack Obama in 2008. And we went around to different events. I got my math hat on, and this is the Nevada math hat. And we went there because under the direction and leadership of CJ, because she had a great deal of experience and connections there. So without further ado, welcome CJ, Carolyn CJ Essex. Woo!
Hey there, hi.
Hello,
Good to see
sister.
you.
Sister, good to see you. I like your necklace.
Oh, you know what? This is so I can hear you.
Oh wow, I can't even see.
My
Well,
Bluetooth.
oh, your
But
Bluetooth.
it does. Yes, I forgot to put my necklace on. I've been working all day.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. Now, one of the things I told people out there, well, actually, before we do that, why don't you tell us a little bit just about yourself briefly?
A little bit about myself. I was born in Watts, California, and I'm a child of the '60s. So I look a lot younger than I actually am, and
Hmm.
we'll get into that later. But uh, yeah, I'm on level 60. But anyway, I was born in Watts, California. Grew up in the I didn't grow up in the projects. I think around the age of 3, my mother um, she felt like this Los Angeles was not the place for her family. And so she explored and we moved to Inland Empire in San Bernardino. And that's where I grew up. I went to Christian schools, all
Wow.
my all my education, grade school to high school and college were Christian Seventh-day Adventist schools. And so
Wow.
I was born in the church, raised in the church. All I know, all I knew was the church.
Wow.
There was never a time I wasn't at the church.
Well, we're gonna definitely get
Um,
into that because you and I literally went to church when we went to Nevada, and we're gonna get to that. We will get to that.
Woo! That
But
was amazing.
inquiring minds want to know, because I threw it out there on social media, that your brother played basketball with Michael Jordan. You want to tell us a
Yes.
little bit about that?
Okay, so this was like a while back.
Right, right.
Ooh. But when Michael Jordan first came into the league, and the timeline for me, my brother he was drafted number 7 in the draft, and
Woo! What year? Do you know what year?
I want to say it was 1978,
Wow, so
I believe.
he was a lottery pick, a high
He
pick.
was a lottery he was a lottery pick, and he only played he only played organized basketball for 1 year, and that was his senior year
Wow.
in high school. So I learned a lot of stuff later about how he ended up in basketball. I just know he's always playing basketball, what have you. But yes, he did end up getting traded to Chicago. And I actually got to meet Michael Jordan way back then, and when he first got into the league. And my brother introduced me to him. We were all at we're at the hotel, and we were downstairs. I guess they were having like a, I don't know, like a reception or something. So there was a DJ. We were dancing, and I remember him asking me a lot of questions about what school I went to and all this kind of stuff. And
So you literally, got to wine and dine and all that and talk and to meet him and face to face.
yeah, it was it's something that I will always remember. Meeting Michael Jordan as a young NBA. He just got into the league. He had just gotten into the league. Yeah.
And what is your brother's name again?
So my brother, his name is Steve Johnson,
Mm-hmm.
and he went to Oregon State, and then he got drafted by the Kansas City. It was one of those old teams, Kansas City. I can't remember the name of that team.
It's all right. It's all right. But the point is, he was on the Chicago Bulls, and he got to with Michael Jordan, and the rest is history. Now,
The rest is history.
Yeah.
He ended up on the Portland Trailblazers, which is an amazing team as well.
Yeah, that's true.
They were rivals to the Lakers. I hated the Lakers back in the day.
Wow.
I was a Trailblazer. Yeah.
Well, you got to support your family. Family or Lakers. Family Lakers. You kind of have family.
Absolutely.
Now you've lived an incredible life yourself, and especially back in 2007, 2008 on the campaign trail, campaigning for Barack Obama, and I know that you had the chance to even introduce Michelle Obama twice. Is that correct?
I introduced Michelle Obama a week out from the general election.
Wow.
It was 1 week. We were in early vote, and they called me and asked me would I like to introduce her to. I was assembly district leader at the time, which was like an appointment by some of the politicians in Nevada, and but I was a super duper volunteer.
Right.
I did everything I could, just like we did with Andrew Yang. Like we would just come up with anything, flower beds for Obama. We didn't care. We were coming up with stuff.
Yeah.
But yes, they asked me to introduce her, and I had already introduced Barack Obama like a year prior to that.
Wow, I didn't wait. You also got to introduce President Obama?
Yeah, he had not gotten nominated yet. They were still in the primary, and Nevada had become an early state that year. It was the first time that they were early state to vote.
Wow.
And I was a precinct captain.
Precinct captain?
Precinct captains are the business. I was actually they called us super precinct captains because we would take several precincts. That were connected in our neighborhood.
Right.
And I got to introduce him to all the precinct captains and volunteers at my daughter's high school.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a pretty amazing experience. I will never ever forget how they coached me. I had a great coach. His name was Krishna. He was an Indian. He's from India. Wonderful organizers. Those young people were just wonderful organizers.
Right.
They made us all feel like superstars. They really did. That was their secret sauce.
Well, and you are a superstar. You are a superstar. Now, and I remember there's one story that you got to speak a prophetic word to President Obama. Do you remember that story?
Yeah, I remember. This is like one of the few things that happened that I thought was just like really spirit led, because I had went to church that morning, and I if I can remember how it happened, I just remember the message was about when you're surrounded by your enemies, and there's I think it's a verse in Isaiah where I think it's in Isaiah that says, "Let your enemies be scattered, and let your enemies be scattered." Um, and it was a time when King David was surrounded by his enemies, and
And if I
so
recall, and if I recall correctly, during this time, President Obama, well, as a candidate,
he was being
he was getting
a lot
attacked.
of attack, a lot of attack. They said he was from Kenya. They wanted to see his birth certificate.
He's not black. He's
Um,
not black enough, or he's not
he's
black.
not black enough. He's not black enough. Oh, you name it. It was horrible stuff that was being said about him, and also he was coming up against this establishment, which was Hillary Clinton.
Right.
So it was like, how dare you step in front of her? Um, but he gathered a following because of his message of hope. His message was of hope and unity and of a United States. And it just resonated with people. But I remember hearing that text at church, and I said, if I get to speak to Senator Obama, I'm going to tell him that. Let your enemies be scattered. And I can't remember the whole verse, but it was a pretty powerful verse. And uh, I went to his rally that after church, and I was standing there, and after the rally, he would always shake everyone's hand, just like Andrew would do. He
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't leave until he shook everyone's hand and said hello to as many people as he could. But when he finished speaking, he ran the opposite direction, opposite of me, and I was like, oh my God, he's never coming over here.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So he got half a way across the gym and did a freaking U-turn and ran straight towards me.
Wow.
And I kid you not. And I just repeated the verse to him that you know, although you are pressed on every side, let your enemies be scattered. And he looked at me and said, that's a good one. And he just like that, he started shaking everybody's hand.
It was like the Twilight Zone, right? It was like he zoned in, and then it was like, all right, it was like a special moment, and it was like, all
It
right, snap,
was
and then snap back to reality.
it's just completely crazy, Eric, that he was running across the gym and did a freaking U-turn and right straight towards me. It was just like, no, you go this way. I'm like, oh
Yeah. Well, speaking of incredible things, you're also an amazing mother, single mother,
my God. Oh, thank you.
and that's your I think your daughter, right? She finished UCLA. Am I correct?
Yeah, she graduated, I think it's about 4 years ago now from
Right.
UCLA.
Quite
It
accomplishment.
was, it was a very trying time for her. I'm so proud of her that she completed it. Yeah.
And you also have
And,
a son.
yes, and my
Nice.
son is 17,
Woohoo!
and and he
Teenager.
is,
Teenage
yeah,
life.
he's
Hashtag
teenager.
teenage
Oh,
life.
you know what? Wash your hands, let it go. These teenagers, oh, they have a mind of their own.
Well, we've all been through that. So we cannot.
Yeah, but we didn't dare have a mind of our own in front of our parents. You better hide that in the mirror or something.
Well, that's true. The times they have changed. They have changed.
They, hmm
Now, what are some? You've kind of gone through a lot with that. And what are some pieces of advice, or what's been the secret to your success as a single mother? in LA, in Nevada?
Hmm. Well, as a parent, you have all these visions of literally what you want your child to be. Sometimes you just have these visions of greatness for them. Like I always thought my son should have been a boxer. I named him Rock, okay, Rocky.
Mm. Okay.
And when he was born,
He's got
he
the
just
he's got the eye of the tiger. He's got the eye of the
he
tiger.
he definitely looks like he should be boxing. And so, you might have all these preconceived ideas. Some people want their kids to go into uh, being a pastor, and that's always been in the back of my mind, a man of God that can preach the word. Um, uh, uh, you know, but at some point, parents, we have to say, I have filled this child with everything that I possibly could fill this child with. I have prayed for this child. I have given this child over to God and say, help me raise this child. And at some point, you have to say, I did my job, and now I'm going to let the Holy Spirit lead this child. Now, my son was brought up into the church as well and was in front of powerful, powerful ministers, Bishop McClendon in Los Angeles, in Nevada, one of his sons, uh, Mark Hawthorne in Nevada. He just was always around the word, a powerful, prophetic, strong word of God. And and also my father, his grandfather played a role. He would have him read the Psalms 23 and uh, and the Lord's Prayer every day out of the big family Bible.
Well, so it sounds like you're able to kind of give him a regular diet of spiritual wisdom, and you surrounded him with positive men and positive mentors, right? With people at whether it's church or your own father, and of course, giving all yourself. You had a vision for your son and your daughter. Sounds like
I just knew that my children had to know the Lord for themselves, and
mm,
they have.
beautiful. Now, when we one of the things we did during the Andrew Yang campaign, do you remember the one time we went to the African American Museum? And
Um,
it was like a book release. It was about Jay-Z, I think it was. But anyway, but we went to Nevada. That was the big thing, the road trip. And
yes,
the first, I still remember vividly. We all went to the pastor. Forgot his name right now. But
Eugene, Pastor
Pastor,
Eugene
that's right,
Lewis.
Pastor Eugene Lewis. And I remember
Hmm.
we all went and we kind of sat at his feet, and he basically encouraged us, exhorted us, give us a pep talk of the importance of our mission. And
Yes, he did.
that was so empowering to all of us. And that leads us to the next question is what has been the role of faith in your political activism? How are those things connected in terms of whether it's campaign? I know that you worked on not only helping getting Obama elected, but getting the Affordable Care Act passed, right? And also, obviously, back in 2009, 2010, Andrew Yang passed. How does how has the church or how has your faith kind of been shaped you, or how are those things connected? The faith and the activism.
So to me that's kind of tricky dance actually, because I'm so reverent of um, faith and Christianity that I don't like to mix it with politics.
Right, right.
Like, I shared with you that I did run for office in Nevada, and one of the things that the candidates would do is that they would visit the churches, which were a huge part of organizing the Black vote.
Right.
But every time I would visit a church, it was strictly for me, number one, to get my worship in,
Yes.
I had to have that because I felt like I didn't have strength for today if I didn't, or the week if I didn't have that. I needed that.
Hmm.
And, but that was my number one goal, was to worship God. And the number two goal was to make sure the churches knew that they had a Christian candidate that would take their faith into consideration. And but the considerations would have to be for rights and equality, not and religious freedom. Um, and so, if there was ever a fight for religious freedom, whether it be at the schools or public places, I had to let the community know that I was a fighter for that, because that was important to me, especially in the schools.
Right.
Um,
But
yeah.
you are not trying to impose your yeah, you wanted people to have religious freedom, but you're not trying to
No, no,
impose.
no, no. Mm-mm, no. But I did get a lot of flack from some people in the community who thought that they would look at my Facebook post or my social media post and they would say, how can you mix Christianity with politics? And you're running for office, but yet you talk about Jesus and your faith. And I would always encourage them, that those are two different things. I'm just sharing something personal about myself. I am a woman of faith. I do believe that God uh, is over our lives as far as purpose,
Right.
and that when we connect with God and we connect with His vision to gather His people, because that is a vision and a desire of God, is to gather His people, so that He can be in the midst, right?
Right. Right.
Yes.
So you're not trying to impose religion upon people, but you're just
Mm.
motivated. You're motivated. Sounds like you're motivated for public service because of your faith. Does that sound right?
I would say that. I would definitely say that. Very motivated because of my faith. Number one, to be a public servant.
Right. And I want to kind of deep into that because I noticed that a lot of African American churches tend to be more open to that and more politically active in terms of fighting for justice. I mean, Dr. King, he was a preacher. And, there's one church I went to, they said that they would allow people who supported different candidates. It could be Trump, it could be Andrew Yang, it could be Bernie. They said that, hey, we are open. We want to give people a platform to talk about politics.
Hmm.
Not that we're not here to endorse the candidate per se, but at least create that platform. And there seems to be a lot of civic engagement from the African American churches, but we don't see from a lot of, in my experience at least, uh, Latinx churches or Asian churches or European American churches. Why is that,
Right.
you think?
Because it's a tradition. It is an absolute tradition, especially since Martin Luther King Jr., who was, like you said, a preacher, but he was a civil rights activist.
Right.
And I believe that he was moved by his faith to be a public servant
Right.
because because of the disparities and because of the violence. He couldn't sit there in church and not say, I have to stand against that, of the treatment of African Americans in the country that I live. And so as a Christian, I believe he was moved to do that. I don't think he necessarily wanted to be part of politics like that, but where was he going to take the fight to? You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right. Yeah. I mean, again, he could have been a preacher and just within the four walls of the church, right? And how would that
Yes.
actually address the plight and the discrimination and the segregation
Right.
against African Americans if all you did was just preach in the pulpit on, within the preaching to the choir,
Right.
if you will? How would things change, right? I mean, if he
Hmm.
really believed what he believed in, which is that God is just, that would motivate him to act publicly, not just within a church space.
And Eric, at the time, the same thing was going on. We were being killed in the streets by the police. Um, Lynchings were still going on at that time, and we were still being brutalized by the police at that time. So he had to say something, and because he was such a talented orator, people listened.
Right. Yeah.
They gravitated towards him, just like people gravitated towards Barack Obama, because he could speak just into the hearts of everyone. Just like Andrew Yang could speak into the hearts of everyone, because it's simple and practical things that he's saying. And I find it really amazing about Andrew Yang. He's not a super duper Christian, correct?
Yes. Yeah. He has some
He
Christian influence. But
his
he's not like
wife,
yeah. His parents are secular, but I mean his
but
wife is Christian, and actually
his wife
that's the reason why
is,
he started to go to church, actually, because his wife said, if you want to be in my life, you better come with me to church, and it
oh,
worked.
did she?
Yes, yes.
I love it. And she's a praying woman. She's a praying woman, and she prayed that he be covered. And she saw a calling on her husband, and encouraged him. Yes, happy wife, happy life. Yes, and I thought that was so amazing. I was attracted to Andrew Yang because he had a wife that was a woman of faith. I really, I don't know how I found that out, but once I found that out, I was all in. I said, I agree with her. I'm
Yeah,
going to touch and agree with her that her husband has a calling.
right. And a lot of her ideas. I mean, a lot of Andrew Yang's ideas. I think you and I would probably agree that they're kind of consistent with biblical teachings in terms of they're very loving. Like God's love is embedded in things like universal basic income, things like
Well,
universal health care, right? Would you agree with
God is,
that?
oh yeah, God is a provider. Yes,
Yes,
God
yes,
is a provider.
yes.
He's our provision. He gives us our daily bread. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, definitely in line with the desires of God,
And
the
on that
will of God.
and on that note, what is your favorite verse of the Bible? Well, what's a verse that you really like that's shaped your life?
Um, oh my goodness.
I know there's
Um,
so many. I know there's a lot, but just pick one.
One is in Revelations. I think there's two of them, and I'm sorry I didn't do my homework and not have my verses.
It's all right. It's all right.
And
But
because
just
I do have verses. And but um one of them is in Zechariah, where it talks about God sings songs over us. You know, a lot of times we think of worship and worship music, of us singing songs to God. But that's part of the conversation and the relationship we have with God. But the other part is He sings songs of promise over us. And so
wow.
that's in Zechariah. And then the other one is Revelation that has really um, shaped my faith in God is when He says in Revelations 3, I think it is, "Behold, I have set before you an open door which no man can shut."
Mm.
That is a verse that has followed me through my life.
Yeah, because when God
Yes,
opens that door, nobody else can close it.
nobody else can close it. And
Now
I'm
we're
gonna
gonna
plug my
yeah,
phone in because it's about to die.
we're about to end here, but uh, any shout outs you like to give, or any kind of last words of wisdom and no exhortation?
Well, I want to I want to give a shout out to the Yang Gang and tell them that I actually pray for the Yang Gang. And I
Mm,
know that we are going through some type of turbulence, I would call it, because so many people came together. Andrew has unified a coalition of people across um, races, across gender, across religions,
class,
class,
ideology.
ideology. Well, we didn't realize that because we were all like, we
Andrew
love
Yang,
this
we're like
guy.
Yang Gang. We're like all out UBI and all these things, right? We're all unified, but we're all
And
very
it's,
different.
yeah. And so, although, I personally had to take a step back because if you remember when we went to the church in Nevada, when, the last time we were organizing in Nevada,
Mm,
and I said that prayer and I said, God, I don't want to do anything that isn't your will.
yes, I remember that.
Yeah. And my whole life changed. I lost my job. But I quickly got another job. Then COVID-19 came and I lost that job again,
Oh
you
man.
know. And now I'm working again, they called me back. But, I just want to let everyone know that keep the faith because I don't think that God would allow us to see this day and would not allow us to see a policy like UBI if it was not going to come to pass
That's
in
right.
some shape, form, or fashion.
Yes.
And as you can see, many of the people, politicians, elected officials, are now talking about we have, first
We had
of
to
all,
get
they're thinking about the economy, but
right.
second of all, they're thinking we cannot leave our people out like this. It will be
We gotta
hell to pay.
yeah, we gotta put the money in the people's hands. Just directly to their hands. No middleman. No middleman, just direct.
And although I received, what I needed from my unemployment, I wanted to go back to work because I felt like I wasn't doing my job. You know what I mean? And that is getting information to people on how to cope with this COVID-19 and how to move forward and make sure you're doing your census and that you're filling out your census papers and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So I just want to encourage everyone. Shout out to my kids, to Rock and Shannon, my oldest daughter, my only daughter, my oldest child. I call them my apples, my first apple and my second apple.
Oh.
But yes, I want to send a shout out to them, my family, and thank you, Eric. Shout out to you for having a great broadcast.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. That was such a joy to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, I loved it.
All right. God bless.
God bless you.
Bye bye. Wow, there you have it. Another incredible story. A woman of faith, a single mother, a political activist, a leader, an organizer. It just struck me that God could use her to introduce Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, encourage Barack Obama, and getting involved with the Andrew Yang campaign, and really seeing God's love transform this world. To see UBI, something like universal basic income, put money into people's hands to really help the people and to really see God's vision of justice and love and hope in the world. So thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. I'm out.